Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to a hellacious talk show on episode 5. We're going to talk about everything CAW. We're going to break it down to, more just the game, community, digital footprints, personal health, and also the main ingredient that I feel like that needs to be talked about during this is especially building each other up instead of tearing each other down. And I'm going to name some categories where that, limits that. But first of all, guys, ladies and gentlemen, boys, children of all ages, welcome to the podcast as we're getting everything set up here, everything CAW. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. This is going to be a good episode as we dig right in to the topics. The trap of gatekeeping and critique. So this is where it becomes a major focus between building someone up and tearing someone down. This could be, different examples. Maybe, how constructive feedback crosses the line into ego-driven or straight up bashing someone's creative work or bashing someone in general because of you feel like that you are jealous of not only their creative work, but also who they partnered around with or who they working with. And this is the reason why that I say that this is a big example of building up versus tearing down. There's a lot of things that I see in today's community that really does not add up to the business. The business is about building up rather than tearing down. You see a lot of wrestlers building people up instead of tearing them down. The biggest part that I see with this, especially when somebody succeeds in the CAW community, I feel like that, a lot of people ain't happy for them. They gritty, they envy, they are, mad at the fact that they can't, get this many subscribers, or they're mad because they was a part of the train and they didn't want to be a part of it. There's a lot of things that you got to take into tuition with the gatekeeping. The trap of gatekeeping is this. This is the biggest part of what I've saw in the CAW community that's damaged a lot of content promoters and creators at the same time. One of those is definitely gatekeeping. In other words, you got one individual, or maybe even 3 or 4, depending on how it's set up. But I'm just saying in general that we all need to come in as a community and quit having gatekeepers that are blocking the gate where others can't get in. We got to think about how the wrestling business works. Now, that does not mean that I'm allowing or enabling pedophiles. If they are doing that, then that's a whole different level. But I'm saying entirely, if you got proof that they doing it, or they have, if there's actual evidence of them doing it, then, that's a different story. But, the gatekeeping, what I'm talking about is, just blaming people for not even have documentation or proof. That is a huge no-no. That's what I call gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is something you do not do. I will also say here on the subtopic, celebrating small creators and new voices, giving a shout out on your channel, social media to the first time arena designer, global creator who has handful of followers, validating their effort so they keep creating. This is a huge thing too. You give credit where credit is due. If somebody's helping you, whether it's, through their talent, their show, logo wise, podcast wise, whatever the case may be, you need to, give that credit where credit's due. You need to give that spotlight back to them because, they help build you for what you are. In other words, let me put that into details. Um, if somebody's helping you with an arena, championship, logo design, whatever the case may be, give shout outs. Tell them, hey, this is how we run things. You know, this is what they did. Here's a shout out to this person. Thank you for doing this, and the third. But also, you know, we gotta do this next part. You know, this is a major key factor too, because you know, you look at what Thea Hale, WWE NXT wrestler, she said a lot of people loves to tear somebody down, especially when they're successful. And the thing is, the reason why I like Thea Hale is because she hits truth on all cylinders. You know, this is the same thing with the CAW community. If we can't think of what we type behind a computer or behind a laptop, you know, whatever the case may be, then we're not only we're not only allowing drama, but also we are what we call in this is guilty by association. So let me go back to this topic too. It just hit me on a ton of bricks. So if you are enabling pedophiles and you are doing stuff that, you know, maybe somebody warned you about, I don't know the case. I'm just putting examples out. You know, this is the part of gatekeeping. You know, I kind of feel like that this needs to be talked about because a lot of creators, they don't get the constructive criticism. You know, DJ Chaotic brought a lot of good points into the game. And if DJ was up, I would definitely, you know, send him, you know, invite link so he could come in and, you know, give his intakes on these topics. But I don't think DJ's up, so I have to do it myself. So this is a whole new thing. But getting back onto the culture design, and I'm going to try to put this in the chat where everybody can see it. We get into the cultural shift, building up versus tearing down. You know, Thea Hale, we go back to that thing. Thea Hale made a good example out of this. She said, if you got to tear somebody down, especially a human being, think what you type on the internet. That is a human being on the other side. The thing that I liked about that saying, a lot of people, like I said, they may not have respect for Thea Hill, and here's the reason why that I say that I have uppermost respect for Thea Hill for what she said. She stood up to not only the haters but also the people that was putting her down. You know, we need to be the same way in CAW. People that is putting us down, that's been talking about us in different chats, that's been talking about us in, you know, different areas. We need to literally be a Thea Hill in this scenario. Put her foot down, tell them to stop, and think about what you say, especially if you can't say it to their face. You know, Thea Hill, she, you know, had a good thing also about building something up. You know, she hit the nail right on the coffin when I watched that video. She said, many people can't fathom or have their comfortability of doing what she done as a professional wrestler by traveling and going, you know, everywhere that she does. And they rather just, you know, stay at one place and not do that. But at the same time, I got to give her respect. She put it all out on the line. And before we, you know, move on with this topic, I'm going to find the video. Now, I found the video, guys. This is actually by a YouTuber, and I'll give him a shout out for his work. I don't want to like take his work, but I'll give shout outs where it's due. By professional.jasonx. Huge shout out for him for putting this out here. You know, I want you guys to listen to this because this is a major topic that I want to bring out here. So I hope you guys are listening to this because this is a major key factor. You know, this right here is the reason why that I said what I said about what Thea Hale said. And, you know, let's play the footage and listen to what Thea Hale's got to say. I want you guys to amplify this in the CAW community because this is very important. She spoke truth on haters. She spoke truth on, you know, what you say behind a keyboard, especially to a human being. To every CAW creator out there that is listening, this don't only apply to professional wrestling, but this is the EFED and CAW community as well that I'm preaching to you guys. Let's hit the footage.
I've been wanting to touch on the subject for a long time now, and I just haven't felt like I should, and now my opinion's changed. I'm a 22-year-old girl. Think about that for a second. I wouldn't have even graduated college if I moved away in the middle of high school to pursue my dream. Because I valued that over comfortability. And most people could never fathom to do that. And every day.
Notice what she said, could never fathom to do that. In other words, there's a lot of people that have the dream of doing it, but they don't put their foot out to do it. Or maybe, you know, medical condition, whatever the case may be. But that is the intro that I want you guys to watch on the video, but I will play the video for the full video, so don't take me to, I'm just going to give you a little teaser, but listen in on other things she said, because this is a very key important topic on what I'm trying to get my point at.
To look at my Twitter timeline or look at social media and see negative comments about me as a human being is disgusting. I've worked my ass off for 5 years for the biggest moment of my career. And you all take it as a joke. You act like I'm the worst human being in the world for my 1 ounce of success that I finally had. It sucks. I don't think you understand every day that I wake up happy, sad, miserable. I don't care. I put professional wrestling above everything.
Notice the tears in her eyes, guys. This is over the hate. Same hate that we're getting in the EFED culture is the same hate in professional wrestling. I just don't understand why fans, and especially why EFED and CAW creators has to hate. You know, think about that as a human being. You saw the tears in her eyes. Think about what you say on the internet. You're affecting someone's probably mental health that probably could, you know, take their own life. But think about what you say. I agree with Thea Hale on this. This is a major topic, and this is the reason why that I had this podcast, because I felt like somebody needed to hear this. But let's go back and, you know, finish the video and get this point across.
And for 5 years, I have valued this industry to such an extent, and I valued others' opinions. And it is exhausting. I love this more than anything. But what I don't love is to constantly be torn down by other people, by other human beings. At the end of the day, I am a person.
That right there is the golden thing I've ever heard any WWE wrestling thing. Any WWE NXT star or WWE wrestler even say, at the end of the day, I'm a human being. Please stop with the negative comments. You can look in her eyes, guys. She sincerely means this. Same thing for the CAW community. Please stop with the negative comments. Please stop with just the BS. I mean, the list goes on, but we're going to continue playing the video.
I'm a 22-year-old girl who is getting to live my dreams. And for some reason, that's wrong. And for some reason, you guys decide that you want to go hate on somebody else because you're not happy with yourself. You feel...
There is another key point. You hate on somebody else because you're not happy with yourself. That is a major key factor with a lot of EFED CAW creators. They hate themselves and they want to make everybody else's life miserable. That is the God's honest truth. And this came from Thea Hale's mouth.
You need to tear somebody else down to build yourself up. Are you serious? I don't understand. I don't understand the level of hate in professional wrestling today. And for just 1 second, I would love for you guys to internally think, would you like for somebody to say this about me? Think about that.
I love that comment. Would you love anybody else to say that about me? But also, it amplifies this. Would you like somebody to say that about you? Think about what you type behind the keyboard, behind the scenes, behind the, messenger, social media, because it can affect somebody. Be smart on what you say on social media and the internet. Key points, key blanks.
So please, take an extra 10 seconds before you put something up on social media. Please. And remember that the person on the other end of it is also a human being.
Another reason why that I love Thea Hill. Think about what you say to other people, because also on the other side is a human being. So if you can't take that to consideration and you keep on, going behind messenger chats, talking about people, tearing them down, you are the problem. Simple, point blank, key, nada, donut, zero. You are the problem. Play the footage.
So, I don't know what to tell you. Happy Sunday. Go to church.
NXT star Thea.
So you heard what she said on this topic. And the reason why that I played this video, guys, is not only for the entertainment of you guys, but also to let you know what you say to people will have consequences. The internet is a big world. You got to build somebody up instead of tearing them down. It can affect somebody's personal health. It can affect a community. I mean, there's a lot of things that you have to think about behind the scenes. As we get into this, little deeper into this, this is the reason why that I'm going to say the next topic's important after playing this video. Handling drama and refusing to amplify it. Choosing not to engage in community beef, gossip, or smear campaigns that drain your energy and hurt others. You heard what Thea Hill said. Think about what you're saying on the other end, because it's a human being. I don't care if it's in professional wrestling or CAW wrestling. Think about it before you type it. Think about it before you say anything. Think about the next words that come out of your mouth, because it could hurt somebody, and you could probably get criminal charges if they decide to hurt themselves, if they have mental issues. Think about what you say before you put it online. There's lawsuits that could happen if, especially somebody takes their life over what you said. So just think about what you type on the internet before you do it, because I'm warning and also giving a heads up that maybe somebody needed to hear this, that, maybe to cheer them up and maybe enlighten them. Think about what you say on the internet, guys. Very important. Now we're going to get on to this topic, and I kind of feel like this is very important as well. And I know the reason why that I'm going to bring this up, getting back on topic here, is digital proof footprints. This is the reason why that I said words live forever. In Thea Hill's video, this is the reason why that I back this up by a video that needs to be out there, that needs to be heard throughout every CAW community, every CAW promoter, every CAW creator, etc. The list will go throughout this podcast for this reason. When you put others down, whether you are a bully, you're jealous of somebody's success in the CAW community, whatever the case may be, you are setting a bad example for everything that I feel like that does not need to be in pro wrestling. Okay. And here's the reason why that I say this. This is a key factor into this whole digital footprint. When we get into it, we talk about the preeminence of the internet, realizing that a hateful comment, a petty quote tweet or a rash response typed in anger does not disappear. It stays attached to your name and reputation. So in other words, just think about it. What you say behind the screens is now behind your reputation and your name and your company. Think about things before you post it. Think about things on how it's going to affect you and your reputation as a CAW promoter and a CAW company, which is eFed CAW related. Think about that before you top shit, because here's what could happen. Here's an example. I'll give you an example to clarify this. Posting a sarcastic or degrading reply to someone's promotion card in a moment of frustration, only for that screenshot to follow you years later when you're trying to corroborate with others. So in other words, what you say, it could be documented. It could be documented in a way to where you're, okay, it's going to be taken here and you're going here with it. So in other words, when they screenshot it, and for example, it may say that I hate this company because they said this to me. And, you know, when the owner gets that and he didn't say nothing about you, that's a screenshot. That's lying on his company. He can use that against you by saying, I didn't say that. Here's proof. And he's got proof that he didn't say it on his end, which now that right there is going to follow you throughout your CAW wrestling universe, because now you're just topping something that you made up that he didn't say. And now it's like a revolving door. It's drama all the way. It's pretty much false accusations. And, you know, here's a key topic about the false accusations. There is a lot of people that still do this today. They hate the fact that, you know, I've been successful in CAW. They hate the fact that Kevin Impact's been successful. They hate the fact that Iceman's been successful. They hate the fact that, you know, Broski's been successful. They hate the fact that everybody has been successful in our crew, that they have hated on us since day one, and they can't stand the fact that we are now growing into a stronger unit compared to the people that just don't want to listen to what I say. So now, the human behind the screen. This is a good topic too. About this. And, you know, Thea Hill, she touched on this topic if you've watched the video. I cannot replay the video. I did that once, so bear with me. But the human behind the screen, not only you guys are not thinking about what could happen behind the screen, but also you're typing in something that really and truly, you know, CAW-wise, that you are not really coming to full tuition about it. You're really wanting to top something that, you know, it's kind of like, for an example, I'm going to try to explain this in better terms. I'm trying to think of the thing I'm going to say here. It's kind of like, you know, you topping something saying, oh, you know, I hate, you know, for example, Devin Broski, he's the biggest douchebag of them all. You know, when you top something like that in the computer or, you know, the keyboard, don't you think the owner is going to find out eventually, and then he's going to confront you about what you said? So just because you're hiding behind a screen, there's a reminder to this. Think about what you top. You know, Thea Hill said it. Think about what you put on the internet, because it follows you. It follows you everywhere you go. You cannot escape from it. You cannot hide it. You cannot run from it. It follows you everywhere you go. And I'm going to share this out right here, and I'll definitely agree with Broski what he's saying. And this is a major key factor on why some eFeds are not really wanting to be successful. I kind of figure this out. So now, going back on the key topics behind the screen as a human, remember that words can inflict real psychological damage, especially on a younger or more vulnerable creators who turn to the community as an escape. There's a reason why that we get out of the real world. We're trying to escape the real world realities, getting our mind off of real world stuff. So when you say something as words, you can really damage somebody, even though that, you may be joking, or you may be, you may be typing it, and don't think that you can hurt them in a way. Somebody eventually will take something the wrong way. Trust me. It's been done. What I'm trying to say is this: when you're writing something to somebody, especially, if you're writing to a promoter, let's say if you're trying to get in the eFed company, make sure it's professional. Make sure that it's not going against kayfabe. Make sure it's not going against, breaking the business, or there's a terminology that I'm trying to think here. Don't break the business, or don't sell the business. And what I mean by that is if you know something that somebody has taught you through the business, try to keep the business inside the business and not let it out to a fan. But at the same time, same thing goes for a call promoter, call creator, and, these words that are behind the screens. You don't want to make this to where it's like, not really watching wrestling on TV as drama like they do. It's basically going to personal levels, to where it becomes where tension's building up, and you got, this guy going against this guy, and they are like so mad. Now it turns into like a fight that you can't have no control over because of words of pretty much words can hurt a person. Like I said, be careful what you say. Especially, if it's somebody's, significant other, maybe it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband, whatever the case may be, especially that, those four right there, those are the deadly four that will get you in so much heat talking about somebody's other significant others. Just putting that out there, whoever's listening, I hope you guys enjoying this, because I'm getting a lot of details out to help you later on in the CAW community that will keep you away from that four hot, I call it the four cornerstones of hell. And the reason why I call it the four cornerstones of hell, you talk about somebody's girlfriend, you're going to get your ass kicked. You're going to talk about somebody's boyfriend, you're going to get your ass kicked. Talk somebody's husband or wife, you're definitely going to get your ass kicked. So, I mean, think about what you say to those four, topics I mentioned. If you're talking about somebody's significant other, because that can land you in hot water and get you in something that you don't want to be a part of. I think they say it, especially in Chicago. I know I got some Chicago people that is either listening, or I know they have this saying, snitches get stitches. And there's a reason why they say that. You keep talking your mess, somebody's going to bust that mouth. That's just how that's just how the cookie's going to crumble. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is sometimes, especially, when you're doing a promo, you need to keep that promo as professional as you can get. Don't try to go out, and attack people's loved ones, relatives, or anything of that to make it seem hostile, like a personal attack is what I'm trying to get out there. Example of this is, what I said, writing a harsh word, or, something that's harsh of someone's fed or wife or whatever the case may be, without thinking the facts that they might be dealing with personal stress offline, or, personal stress in general because the words you said, and using their fate as one safe creative outlet. In other words, you need to think about what you say to a person in general, especially, like I said, with those four topics. I think I touched on that. I'm not going to touch on that because I've already explained that. Now we go to the power of positive reinforcements. This is where I feel like that a lot of call creators need to have reinforcement to, especially, if they run a company, to where it's going to reinforce some structures, restrictions, rules, regulations, codes of conducts to protect them from being involved in the two dispute. Okay, for example, we go back to the wives and husbands scenario. Let's say somebody in your call, promotion talked about somebody's wife or husband, and it leads to a major conflict. Okay, now you need reinforcements to help you. And what I mean by reinforcements, maybe it's a moderator, maybe it's somebody that's loyal to the brand, that stays on the positive side, that's worked up to legendary status, that's build the company within, never left, whatever the case may be. I'm just throwing ideals, throwing examples out. They come in and help you, deal with these two individuals, because now you're going to have to tag team this. Now, it becomes like a 2-on-1 scenario, because you can't get them, these two people to cooperate, because now they button heads at each other. Now you need a reinforcement to back you up, saying, hey, you guys or girls needs to stop, doing what you're doing, try to calm down, send it on a professional level, because this ain't professional. And if they don't do that, then you have to take it to what we call in the business, you have to take it to management. Management, especially, if somebody's like a GM on the show, or a owner or commissioner, whatever the case may be, talent relations, whatever the case may be, you take it to them. Let them sit down with those two, talk to them. And if they still can't, get it through their heads, or get them to meet at, common sense error, then your last option is to let them two go. And, sometimes I know that's hard, because it may be your two of the biggest names that you got in your company, and, they can't get along. So you got to meet the burial somewhere, right? You got to put your foundation at the door, because you got two people that's so hot, what we call as hot-headed, that doesn't listen. DJ, I love DJ Chaotic, and, he's got one of the most true quotes that I've ever heard anybody say in the CAW wrestling industry. And shout out to you, DJ, if you're listening. Hard head makes a soft ass. So in other words, when you're hot-headed, you're getting that hard head. You're not paying attention to what, the owners are telling you, and, you're creating friction is what we call it. Friction, which means you're causing the call, community, or that call company, whether it's in chat of Facebook Messenger, whether it's in chat in Discord, whatever the case may be. Now you're butting heads with the owner. Now it's causing friction. Now it's literally building up to tension, to where you could resolve it by, calming down and not being so hot-headed, because I know a lot of people that is hot-headed, that they don't get it through their thick skulls. I know a lot of people. I'm not saying names, but I'm just saying this in examples. So don't, fire back at me for, pointing names out, but I'm just putting examples. There's a lot of people that's hot-headed. And like I said, it causes a lot of friction, a lot of anger, and sometimes that anger can, get the owner and them to butt heads. And the reason why that I say, keep positive reinforcements, because you're going to need somebody to back you up. This is a tag team thing. This ain't a single thing no more. Back then, probably when, other people started, they probably done it one-on-one, but today's time and era, you got to have a tag team. You got to work as a unit. If you don't work as a unit, there's a thing that we have around our symbol that says, united we stand, divided we fall. So if we don't united we stand, then we all going to fall. This thing's going to crumble, and CAW will be no more. So you need to take it to consideration. Maybe you need to think about what you say and do to protect what we love as CAW. That's all I'm saying on that topic. Getting to the priority. I kind of feel like this is important too to touch on. Now we get on to this. Now we get on to the priority, personal health first. Now I understand that everybody's got health problems. Maybe it's what I mean by health problems is maybe it's somebody that's has got like mental health. Everybody's got health problems. It may not be physical or, like I said, mental, whatever the case may be. But going back on this topic, personal health is a major priority with two categories that I'm going to talk about. It's physical and mental. Mental is the top priority. Physical you can, handle, but mental is the very key factor in this. Mental health is, thinking about what you say to them. Because, somebody with mental health, especially, they will take it the wrong way and try to cause all kinds of stuff that don't need to be into it. And to be honest, we are a CAW community. We ain't here to fight each other. We ain't here to tear nobody down. We're here to build each other up at the end of the day. So getting back on this topic, details, recognizing when pressure pumps out custom content, run shows, and meet community expectation, it is destroying your mental and physical health. Examples of this could be, staying up all night, especially if somebody's talked about you either on Messenger, Discord, Instagram, Twitter, whatever the social media is, they could be talking about you on social media. And that, person with mental health is not like, a person like me that's, that don't have mental health, but they may take it the wrong way. They may take it the wrong way to where, it feels personal to them. So in other words, back to watching what your words is, you got to use your words different to explain to them better so they don't take it the wrong way. Because I got, a friend that is not in the CAW community. He has mental health. I understand what you got to do to, these people are different. These people are different. And what I mean by different is, these people are built different. And what I mean by building different is these people, you have to explain stuff better to them than you would a normal human being. Especially, if they got disabilities, I got a disability. So, I mean, I got an LD, which is learning disability, but thank God I'm not, affected by the mental portion of it. But at the same time, the mental portion is a huge factor. And what I'm trying to say is somebody that's got, a disability with the mental health, they may take it the wrong way. They may look at it as, okay, he's bullying me. He said this about me, whatever the case may be. You got to think on what you say as words. I mean, I understand that, we are trying to run our companies to be successful. And, I want everybody to be successful. I'm not hating on nobody. I'm just speaking true facts here. But at the same time, when we talking to people with mental health and, with people with disabilities, we got to understand that they're built different. They are built different. They cannot do what other people can do, but at the same time, you got to think it as like Marvel heroes. You ever watch Marvel? Superheroes like Superman. You got Batman. You got Wolverine. These all guys are here to save the world. We need to be like them in order to save the world. We're not saving the world. We're trying to save love and a passion in CAW. We got to kick these people out that are destroying CAW, these villains, like Jokers, like Penguins, like Venom, like Sandman, all these guys that, are trying to destroy the universe. We got to be those superheroes to fight back and put this on a standpoint that, hey, if you're going to get to destroying what I love as a passion, you got to go through me. You got to have that mindset. You got to have that mindset to not only stand up for what's right, but also you have to go back and fix the broken bridges, to be accountable for your actions, to go back and say, hey, I'm sorry, I've done this, or, fix broken bridges that, need to be fixed. Doesn't mean you got to talk to each other. Now, I will say this here in the podcast, if you guys have personal beef and you can't sort it out, then, it's like two battleships going to war. If you guys can't make peace, then, instead of going to war, just go to opposite, ways on the ocean. Separate. Just separate yourself so they don't become a conflict. And this is where a huge thing in stepping away without guilt is a huge factor. This is the thing I'm going to talk about too, because this is a huge factor in itself. The reason why it's better to step away, it goes back to building up and tearing down. This is the same thing that, I will say as a content creator, I've learned throughout the years that sometimes if you got personal beef with somebody, or especially if you got, vendettas or grudges, it's best to, not cause any conflict. It's best to step away from it. Not only for your mental health, for your physical health, but also, step away and just clear your mind and clear your conscience, and try to not be a part of the bad scenario. And what I mean by bad scenario is don't try to allow pedophiles to influence you to do bad things. And I've known a lot of companies, I've been in one of the chats, he had, I'll tell you his initials. It's just H.A. If you know his initials, you know who I am. He was in the chat and he was adding too many toxic accounts, talking about people. And, I had to leave that. I had to basically say, you know what? I'm not a part of this. You do you, I go my route. So I had to pull myself out because I knew what they was trying to do. They was trying to throw me under the bus and blame me, and I wasn't going to be accountable for that. So I put my foot down and say, hey, no disrespect, but I'm leaving on good terms. I just got to step away. I just can't handle the environment here. And sometimes stepping away is actually a good thing. And I explain why this is a good thing. Stepping away it don't mean that you're afraid of them. It means that you're trying to make peace with yourself, get away from that toxic environment, get away from that drama, get away from those people that are doing bad things in CAW, and move yourself towards positivity. It's almost like a mutual agreement, but you're not really agreeing. And I explain this a whole better in topic. So it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys watch Law and Order NCIS, where they, solve crimes and detectives and all that stuff. They actually have a good point in one of their, episodes. One of the big bosses, like detectives, he always says that the crime always has its leads. But at the same time, you got to look at this as a different standpoint, as you got different leads, positivity that can help you in the long run. You gotta think of your mindset. Okay, I don't want to be around these people, but you have to pull yourself away. You have to have that mindset to pull yourself away, because I've noticed a lot of things that are in CAW, and what I've noticed is there's a lot of people that it will enable and be okay with it and not pull away from it, which makes them look bad in the process. And what I'm trying to say here is, getting on topic, stepping away without guilt, is showing that you are being a man about it, and you're pulling yourself away from people that's enabling something that you don't want to be a part of. And I've done that. I've stepped away and put my mind to better positive health. I had to get away from stuff like that because there was a lot of things in CAW that was, getting to me. One of it was, death threats. There was people making death threats about me. I had to step away from that. Doesn't mean I'm going to let them slide with it. I got in contact with lawyers. They are pretty much having the case on this. But at the same time, you got to think about it on the standpoint, what you say and do to other people, especially enabling yourself around these people that are pedophiles and support that pedophilia, or how would you pronounce it? Pedophilia or something like that. You got to take it to a different perspective. It's like, with these laws, I know that, they changed the laws about, the age of 17. I know in Louisiana, you can date somebody 17. As long as they're 17, you can date them. Many people didn't know that. But what I'm trying to get at is we got to be better educated and know that sometimes we got to make a smart strategy to pull ourselves away from not being a part. It doesn't mean we choose sides. Okay. It means that you are going to do better and pulling yourself away so you don't become the influence of those negative people. So these negative people can influence you. They have this way of influence you to do bad. And that's the part about tearing down. You got to build each other up, but at the same time, if you can't get into that agreement, it's best to take the two ships and just sail off. Like I said, doesn't mean you got to talk to them, doesn't mean that you have to have anything to do with them. Maybe you put them on the block list, but at the same time, you gotta have that boundary to say, okay, I'm done with this. I've tried to explain this. They didn't want to listen. Now it's time to park the ships. In other words, you just take the ships and go two different routes. One to the right side, one to the left. And, be done with it. Don't bring nobody's name up in the Facebook group chat or, Discord group chat. Keep it to a bare minimum. If you're going to be professional, at least show professionalism back. That's not being professionalism when you talk about others. I mean, I'm being straight up honest with this topic because I feel like that this is exactly what I feel like needs to be said. And getting back on this topic, that there's more to this. These are community questions I'm going to ask you guys. And the first question is, have you ever caught yourself typing something online just out of frustration and they made you decide to delete it or post it anyway? And, be truthful about this because that's what we're here for, guys. Be truthful. It's a thing that you got to come with yourself. And, Broski made a good point on this. Want to share this out before everybody answers this question. Is CJ means to lift each other up and quit dragging people down. In other words, keep the anchor in the boat when you're moving on the water. That's exactly right. If you can't keep that anchor in the boat, eventually that boat, especially if it hits a rock, you ain't going nowhere. You're stranded on the sea and you're just wasting gas or diesel. Especially, if that anchor is down deep into the rocks that you can't, move, or deep into the, flat surface of the sand, you ain't going to be able to move it. The only thing that you're going to do is hopefully get like a crane to lift that anchor up, and then you can move the boat. But at the same time, definitely agree with what Broski is saying here. Definitely agree with what he's saying. Huge shout out to Broski for that. But going back to that question here, have you ever caught yourself typing something online just out of frustration, and what made you decide to delete it or post it anyways? This is your guys' question. There's some times that myself, I had to basically delete it because I didn't want to say something that was going to hurt somebody on the other end. I'll be truthful. There's some times that I was mad that I was about ready to literally say something that I was going to regret, so I had to delete it, which means I had to delete what I was saying on Messenger because somebody was pretty much trying to literally bully one of my friends. And I had to literally take up for my friend, and it was getting aggravating to the point, I was getting frustrated. And I decided to delete it to keep my inner peace and also to keep it to a bare minimum of me not starting any drama or negativity. So, in other words, well, we're getting somewhere with this. I will say this. Ray has answered this. He said, yes, I have a lot of time. So Ray has deleted some stuff. I'll give Ray his props for being honest there. There's days I had to take step backs for myself because I knew the fighting with demons inside of wanting to hurt somebody personally, but I kept it from a professional spot. I mean, there's a thing, Broski said there, you got to keep it professional. If you can't keep it professional, then why are you in CAW? Because you got to look at it this way, guys. If you're trying to be a CAW wrestler, you got to be professional. Just like the real business. If you went into the real business and pulled the stunt that you're doing in CAW, I guarantee you there will be called what we see a receipt. Receipt means that they're going to teach you the hard way of what respect is. They may, take a forearm, hit you so hard, it hits you right, between the eye and, maybe cut you open from a hit. But they will wake you up. Trust me. I've been to places, where they will literally wake you up from receipt, especially for the disrespect. You got to respect people. If you want to be in the CAW business or the real business, the respect's got to meet. That's the reason why they say brotherhood and respect. That's the two things they want in the business. If you can't do those two, you don't need to be in the CAW community. You don't need to be in the real business. Because if you can't respect somebody, especially the legends that paved their way, you look at legends like NWA legend Tommy Rich, NWA legend Dusty Rhodes, NWA legend Harley Race, Shane Douglas, the list goes on and on. If you can't respect those people that's been there and done that, then, and I definitely agree with Mark on here. I agree with Dixie too. She said there are true friends and there are fake friends, like people bring you down that you don't need. I agree with. And Broski even said it right here. Basically, I ain't lying about those receipts. I already been plenty of those in my wrestling career when I was back in the independent scene. He ain't lying about it. I mean, that's the truth. If you're going to be in the CAW business, you need to respect, and that brotherhood needs to come. If that brotherhood and respect does not meet the two tuitions, and you still talk about people behind group chats and still, pulling your drama, you're the problem. You need to start respecting people. There's the main thing that I'm trying to get off here that needs to be said, and I kind of feel like that this needs to be said nice as I can say it. I don't want to try to hurt anybody because I'm trying to be as nice and gentle as I can. But think about what you say, think about what you do, and most importantly, think about the other person on the other side. That is the major key factor. Because if you type something that is literally going to give them feedback, you're guilty by association as well as they are. Same as that. And, props for Kevin Impact to actually put that, he actually told me a long time, if you give him feedback, then you're not practicing what you're preaching. So huge shout out for him for enlightening me on this, because this needed to be talked about during this podcast. But we're going to get on to the next question here. And I know a lot of people has answered the last question. If you haven't, do so in the live chat, and I'll look at the comments while I'm changing over to the next question. But if not, the questions are going to be moved here in about 10 seconds. So if I was you, I'd hurry and get those questions. I'll wait about another minute just to give the questions enough time so you guys can interact here. But here's the thing that I'm going to say. Going back to the Thea Hell, she made a good thing about, typing something online, especially to another human being on the other side. Think about what you type about, because it could affect that human being on the other side. And, that is the true statement. Huge respect to Thea Hill for what she does in NXT. One of my favorite, NXT stars of this day. She's an awesome wrestler. I mean, heck, I wish I had the athleticism as her. I wish I had, the thing that I love about her is the charisma, the IQ. I wish I had a lot of abilities that she had. She is actually talented. She probably will be women's champion or moving up to the main roster soon if you've not watched her. But So Dixie also said, my old self was always want to give up on everything, and what saved was my husband. So in other words, here's the thing that I'm going to say about that. I know Dixie has told me this before, being in messenger calls. And if it's up to Dixie to, let me reveal this to the audience here, it's up to her. I'll let her get back on that. But I'm not going to say nothing until I have her okay. But getting back on that point that Mark mentioned, people I'm not going to mention, certainly people love blocking people and talking shit about you, and anyone else is telling how much of a coward people can be. And that's true. Mark, I have to give you credit on that. You definitely spoke out on what needed to be said, and very proud of you. And going back on the topic, Dixie said, I didn't want to be around people. I was always putting myself down until my husband lifted me up, and my friend and CJ too. Hold on, let me see if I can try to pull that message up. I don't think I can. Maybe I can. I have to go through something else. Hold on. Probably have to go to my CJ Mondo account because I'm on the Kentucky Gamer. So let me go to my CJ Mondo account to pull that up because I know she left some stuff off. Nope, she just left it as it is. But at the same time, going back. So basically, going back on that topic that she said, she was about ready to give up. Here's a good example why words is so important to this, because Dixie was about ready to quit everything. Me and Broski literally had to talk to her because she got tired of everything. She got tired of not only the drama, she got tired of people talking about people and trying to frame people for stuff. I mean, she pretty much was like upset. I was in the call with Broski when this was going on, and she was upset that she was almost in tears, guys. Kind of like Thea Hale. And to be honest here, like I said, if you're going to say something about a person, at least have the evidence to back it up. At least, make sure it's not something that's going to affect you and your reputation. And also, like Thea Hill said, before you post, think about what you're saying to that other human being behind the screens. That is the truth. As we get on to the next topic here, or the next question, because I know nobody's answered that question. This question is, what is one positive piece of advice of encouragement as a fellow creator gave you completely changed your outlook or being a part of the CAW community? To me, what positive piece of advice or encouragement that a fellow creator completely changed your outlook or being a part of the CAW community? I'm going to say it, Kevin Impact. At one point, before, I ran into Kevin Impact, I was literally like Dixie. I was about ready to hang up the boots, walk out a call, and never do call again. I was about ready to shut the doors. I was about ready to leave. I was about ready to literally put myself in a predicament to where I don't want to be around call no more. So I can understand, Dixie's part of things that I feel like, as a call creator, that this is crucial. Like, you got to have people that's, going to encourage you to keep going, that's going to give you the motivation to keep going. But at the same time, you got to look at it through this, outlook as piece of advice. Definitely got to look on that. Getting back on the thing. Now, talking about this look of outcome here. I definitely agree with what you guys are saying in the chat. You need somebody to build you up, but at the same time, you need somebody to and going on from this question, from this topic, definitely going to agree with Mark on that. And I understand about a dad passing away, Mark, because my dad passed away. So I completely understand where you're going from this. Definitely understand that, there's life. I mean, Broski's been through heck. I mean, I could tell them the stories about the stuff he's been through. But we may need to save that for another podcast, because I definitely probably will bring you in to let you tell your side. And then definitely might bring you on the podcast to tell your side, because I got to fill you in on details about that. But definitely agree with Broski. He's been through hell on some of them, on those stories. Going back on this other thing that I'm going to talk about. We got accountability in calling in versus calling out. This is a huge, thing that I'm going to talk about. And trying to not take up much of you guys' time, because there's a lot of information here that I need to get out here with this topic. The calling in versus calling out parts. The calling in part is the toxicity of public pile-ons. The details of this is examining how social media platforms encourage instant aggressive public cancellations or shaming over minor mistakes, miscommunications, or differing booking styles instead of private communications. Examples of this: seeing a creator making a formatting or stylistic error on a match card and watching dozens of people tweet, mock them publicly rather than sending them a plot DM or simply scrolling past. I think this is crucial on this part, especially if you see this in CAW. Don't know if anybody has been, in this predicament to where, people's made fun of you about this. But I will say this. I've known that, I've made mistakes on one of the shows, and thank God that Kevin Impact corrected me on this. Yeah, I think it was either a DM or maybe a message. Either one of the two. I think it was one of the match cards that I done it with with a poster. The main event, I think it was one of the main events or co-main events, was like the name of one of the CAW wrestler was misspelled, and Kevin Impact looked over it and pretty much contacted me, be like, hey, you got to fix this. This is not right. This is what we need to do versus accountability, calling in, calling out, because people does make mistakes. I will say that on that note. Also, we get into the education over elimination. Fostering a culture where we teach newcomers how to work or generally correct bad habits instead of permanently locking them out of the community. Explaining logo limits as an example, arena sharing equitique, or EFED booking standards to new members with patience, treating their mistakes as a learning curve rather than a character flaw. This I partially agree with, because especially the pedophiles, I don't think, they are going to learn from their mistakes. There's some people that might change. Yeah, there's yay and nay to this, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to change their ways, because they're going to keep on with it's kind of like a drug. It's like telling somebody that if they are hooked on cocaine or heroin, to try to get them help to get off of it. If they are not wanting to go see a therapist or get any help, what's the point of wasting your breath to get them to do it? definitely, going with the owning your mistakes and involving. If they are willing to apologize, learn, and grow when they do, or like I said, their hard-headed temper can get the best of them online. So in other words, hard head makes a soft ass. DJ pretty much put it right on quote with that. Definitely gonna say this as the last thing here on this podcast is we're going to talk about remembering it's supposed to be fun. You got to step back to reevaluate why you started creating content in the first place, to enjoy wrestling, video games, and share passion with cool people. Realizing you turned your EFED into a stressful, unpaid second job with a strict deadline and constantly scaling back your schedule to bring the joy back into the process. So, getting back on the thing here before we end this podcast is the last question I'm going to ask to you fans as well as myself is this: what's the biggest difference you notice between a community that tears its members down and one actually helps people grow? Here's the difference between a community that tears its members down and the one that actually helps people grow. The ones that tears the community down, they don't have a structure. They don't have a structure of rules and regulations. They don't have restrictions. They don't have anything that helps it keep it afloat. Rather than the ones that help it grow, these people has somewhat restrictions. They have a structure to help not only the business grow, meaning the company, but also the content creators, which is the wrestlers that are involved with the show. That is the two major key factors. It's not only the EFED, CAW creator. I mean, not CAW creator, but CAW promoter as, the business portion, but it's also you guys as CAW creators. Here's the major key factor into this whole outlook. This whole outlook, you got to learn building up versus tearing down. If you cannot build somebody up and you tearing them down, you have to learn to adapt, but also you got to learn that, whatever personal vendettas or personal grudges you have with somebody, to message them and talk to them out like grown adults and quit letting it get to you and eating your insides out, which means what I mean by insides, quit hiding it behind the scenes or behind the cameras and literally let it grow into this cancerous form to where you're tearing people down and you're bringing your members down and you're not helping them grow. That is the huge difference between that part in my book. Letting stuff get to you and you're holding it in and you don't want to come out publicly, or you're not wanting to come to that content owner or creator, or making the standpoint, for example, it could be you being in the wrong. You've done somebody wrong in the past that you need to come forth and tell the truth on, that you need to be accountable for your actions and actually be a part of the solution than the problem, which meaning you own up to what you did, you own up to everything and quit making it look like that you are Mr. or Mrs. Innocent. Sums that completely up. Now, as we getting ready to close, guys, I want to ask you one question in the chat. What did you learn about this episode, about this podcast here on the Everything Call? Put it in the live chat or in the comments. definitely would love to know what you guys learned from what we have here. I kind of feel like that this is huge in its entirety. There's a lot of things that I've had to study on to get this podcast ready that, help you guys learn some things. Most importantly, take Thea Hill's advice, by building each other up instead of tearing each other down. That is the most crucial thing that I could say here on this podcast. But I want to thank everybody that has tuned in, that has supported me through the years, that has been a true friend and true supporter, whether it was the podcast or Titan Nation Alliance or whatever the case may be. Continue supporting and continue helping each one of us grow as content creators. That is the mission of why we are in CAW. But ladies and gentlemen, this was the podcast. Like I said, answer this question, whether it be in live chat or in the comments, and I will see you guys here on Everything CAW.